Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Welcome to the 74th episode of the Shipping Podcast. I will be introducing you to Mark Dembitz. He's a business developer at Spire. I met Mark on September the 6th this year in Singapore at the Shipping 2030 conference. You know how much I love innovation and startups and new ideas and things like that, and communicating that to the world. I think I was so lucky to meet Mark because he is talking about something that I definitely don't know anything about. That is nano satellites. Just when I had learned, I thought, just about everything there is to know about satellites, about connectivity, about communication, when I met Andrew Faiola from Intelsat in episode 67. Then I met Mark, and he started to talk about the development in the satellite industry. Without further ado, this is Mark for you. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Mark Dembitz. I am the business development executive for Spire in Asia Pacific. What I do from a day-to-day basis is sell Spire's maritime product, which is an AIS-based ship tracking, vessel tracking solution. My background has not been in the shipping industry. I've done a lot of exciting things in life. I started off in finance and moved to environmental products. And so I was dealing with carbon credits and looking at energy projects that reduce carbon emissions, then renewable energy, and did some commodity trading as well. So got involved in the shipping industry a little bit then with the shipping of coal from Indonesia to India, Indonesia to China. So that was my first real exposure to how the shipping industry actually works. Did a stint back in the energy space and ended up in satellites as a technology, but the maritime space as a product.
So connectivity is something that we've been talking a lot about here in this Shipping 2030 in Asia. So what is your view on connectivity and shipping right now?
Well, I think connectivity in general is everything. Everything is about connecting people. If you think about what shipping is connectivity. You're connecting a port on one side of the world with a port on the other side of the world via a ship. Or you're connecting somebody on one side of a supply chain who has a product with somebody on the other side of the supply chain who wants the product. So connectivity is everything. Beyond that, though, connectivity plays a huge part in how the shipping industry is going to evolve, because people want to communicate. Data is becoming a bigger and bigger part of life. This is a theme that came out very clearly at the conference of the past couple of days, and it plays out in our lives as well, where we are surrounded today by data that in our lives we've never been surrounded by before, and this trend will continue going. So finding solutions to improve connectivity, making more data available for cheaper prices to the maritime world is an absolute must.
So what difference your satellites from the bigger satellites?
Okay. Well, Spire operates a constellation of wine bottle-sized satellites. We call them nano satellites. They're 30 centimeters tall by 10 by 10s. And these satellites are revolutionary in that they are significantly cheaper to build and launch than a traditional satellite. And because they're significantly cheaper, you can launch significantly more of them. And you can afford for their lifespan to be significantly shorter, which also means that you can refresh your constellation much faster than you could if you had a traditional size satellite, traditional costed satellite. And then again, which means in turn that you can actually keep up with the evolution of technology on the ground.
So do you cooperate with the bigger satellites, or is this a completely different channel of communication, so to say?
So we're in a very different segment today, at least. Today, we don't provide communication the way you would think about it from an Inmarsat or an Intelsat perspective. We do, in the maritime space, we track vessels. Our satellites are giant ears in the sky. We listen for AIS pings that all vessels emit, and we gather that information, which is public information, and we are able then to deliver that information to whoever really wants to buy it.
How do you deliver it? I mean, is it like raw data, or is it sorted, or how do you do it?
We provide several different options. The way we think about the client is king. And whichever way the client would like it, as long as we can provide it, we will try to meet that. So you have several ways of providing this data. You can either provide it as the raw data that we receive from the vessels. So straight pass-through. We collect the data from satellites, we download it to our ground stations, and we then provide it straight to the end customer. On the other hand, we also take this data, decode it, and enrich the data with some additional metadata, if you like, that we produce. And then the customers can access that in our database through an API. So these are the two basic ways to access data. Over and above this, we are now building out a suite of smart APIs that will allow customers to very simply, very easily, with only one or two lines of code or a couple clicks of the mouse, access data in a way that until now has been much more involved and much more difficult to access.
Who are your customers? Is it ship owners or ports or cargo owners, or who is your...
Our customers can be anybody who want to know either where a ship is or where a ship is going, or information derived from where a ship is or where a ship is going. And so if you unpack that a little bit, it can be anybody from a Department of Defense and a Navy and a Coast Guard who want to know what vessels are in their maritime territory or are approaching their maritime territory so that they can analyze and boost their maritime domain awareness, all the way through shipping companies who want to know where their vessels are and potentially where their competitors' vessels are. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the small startups today who are disrupting the maritime market by creating very advanced analytics to be delivered either to shipping companies or to commodity traders or to ports. So just the startup community that is trying to disrupt the world as we know it today.
How have you been received by the shipping industry, your company?
By the shipping industry in particular?
Yeah.
So let me first start by saying how our product is different from what exists in the market today. We already touched on the fact that we are building smart APIs that will make it a lot easier for certain customers to access data. But with the satellites we operate, with this nano satellite technology, we are aiming to have more satellites up there than anyone else. We actually already have more satellites in space than anyone else in the AIS space, given that we have 40. We're aiming to have around 70 by the end of this year, and by the end of 2018, up to 100, 120. That will give us more granularity, a lower revisit time, if you like. So the name of the game is, when you're tracking a ship, is to have more data points at more regular intervals. And having more satellites in more diversified orbits, it will allow us to actually deliver that to customers. And so that is the main differentiation between the AIS service that Spire provides versus the AIS data service that our competitors provide. So given this difference in product, we've been received very well and a great degree of interest by not only the shipping community, but by all the clients we serve. If I focus for a minute specifically on the shipping industry, while the interest is there, we are, for now, a step removed from what the shipping companies want today. Because what the shipping companies want would be a platform where they can access data on a screen, they can buy a couple of seats and have ease of access. Today, we don't provide that. We provide the data And most shipping companies aren't yet ready to buy this raw material. In the same way that most people who buy a car want to buy the car. They don't want to buy the sheet metal to actually make the car themselves. But what we are seeing is that more and more companies, especially the bigger ones who can afford it, are interested in playing with the raw data, simply because they can build a solution in-house that is customized to them. One of the themes that came out of the conference over the past 2 days is that as shipping moves towards 2030, and as everything gets digitized, and we move into a world that's more and more digital, people will want a service that is more and more personalized to them. And to do that in the EIS world, you basically will want to develop your own solutions around data that somebody can buy. And that is where I see the industry moving. And so that is what we are focused on.
That is why I wanted you to answer that question. Because I haven't really heard about many ship owners that talks about API and data science. They have come to the conclusion that big data is probably something they need to understand, but they haven't come any further. Not many of them. Some, of course.
I think there is a realization, and the more I speak to shipping companies, the more I see that there is a realization out there that, yes, big data and data analytics is hugely important, and they cannot ignore it. The barriers you face is there's a competency barrier, because as we've discussed, shipping is a very traditional industry, and what we are talking about here is extremely cutting-edge technology that these shipping companies are not yet equipped to deal with. So the way today they want to deal with it is to have intermediaries who build a solution for them. So all they need to do is they just take the information. And while that works in a vacuum of anything else in the industry, what people are seeing as well is that third-party vendors can't necessarily develop the solutions that they want exactly. So, you go to a store and you buy a pair of shoes, and the pair of shoes is nice and it's comfortable and it fits. But today you have the option of going somewhere and getting custom-made shoes at, relatively speaking, affordable prices. So why wouldn't you do that, right? And I think as time goes by, people will, in the shipping industry, people will want custom-made solutions, and therefore they will start foregoing the third-party sort of bland service providers and start buying all the individual components themselves because they want to make something that's tailor-made to them.
I've also heard people ask for industry standards on things the last few days, and that is also important. So this is not to mix up with everyone making their own little version of reality, but to have tailor-made things from a standard, more or less. I mean, depending on what kind of data that you are capturing, of course.
Right. I think you have to differentiate between two things here. The actual data, which in other words are the facts, right? And you do not want to meddle with that. So Spire does not meddle with the facts. We pass on data as we get it from the ships. We enrich it sometimes, but it's very clear when we have enriched it. It's disclosed, you access it in a different way, but those data are the facts. On the other hand, how that data is delivered, how you make it work for you yourself as a company is a different matter. So what we deliver to our customers is the data, the unmodified data. But what customers start to want is how that data is displayed, how the software that displays the data looks, what kind of analytics and algorithms are you using to analyze the data, to extract information out of the data. That's what each individual company is going to want to customize to themselves. And that's where today they go to a third-party provider that builds something that's sort of out of the box, and they have the option to buy that or not to buy it. But they can't really modify it too much. Eventually, they will buy our data and services from somebody else, or they will hire people to actually do this in-house. So if I compare the shipping industry to the commodity trading industry, and both of them are very closely linked, obviously, because the commodity traders hire vessels to transport their goods. the big commodity traders today, the Trafiguras, the Glencores, the Louis Dreyfuses of the world, are all looking into designing their own solutions. Why? Because they've come to the conclusion that none of the service providers actually delivers exactly what they want. So these are big companies. They're companies who have cash. And they have already hired a team of software developers, big data analysts, and not outsourced. They're not going to India to outsource these developments. These companies have small teams in-house to do these things as they are looking at digital transformation for their companies or digital addition. So enhancing their company, not replacing, but enhancing what they do with digital solutions. So they've hired these people in-house. So they already have the people. Now it's just about adding and making them come up with an additional project, right? And so they are already buying raw data because then they can take the raw data, they own it, or they have a license to use it, and they can transform it whichever way they want. The shipping company doesn't quite do this yet. Even the biggest boys don't quite do that. The shipping sector has suffered over the past number of years. Although we did hear over the course of the past couple of days, and I'm very happy to have heard this, that the industry, there is light at the end of the tunnel, seemingly, whether it's next year or 2 years or 3 years down the line. That's okay. And as the industry emerges from the doldrums it has been in, and as there is, led by the big boys, of course, as there is this drive to move towards, like, hey, I kind of want the personalized solution as well. It only takes the first few. Once the first few dominoes fall, then the others fall too. So I'm quite optimistic about how the future of data looks like.
So how do you see the future for the shipping industry in general?
That's a very complicated question. I don't think shipping is going away. Yes, there is a mega trend of sourcing things locally, to reduce pollution, reduce carbon emissions, fight global warming, all of which are super important. But it doesn't take away from the fact that bananas don't grow in Northern Europe. And, people in Sweden may still want to eat bananas for breakfast or for dinner. And those bananas are going to have to come from somewhere else. And how do you get them there? So shipping is going nowhere, right? Technology will transform shipping. Is shipping going to become completely unmanned one day? Maybe, maybe not. There's a lot of barriers to that, not just technology, but cybersecurity. We talked a lot about cybersecurity over the past couple of days. But I am optimistic about the shipping industry because the world is getting more and more globalized. And as it gets more and more globalized, people want more and more goods that you can find only on the other side of the world. And shipping is realistically the only way of getting it there.
We are often looked upon as the Cinderella industry. We are the hidden industry and no one knows about us. How could we change that? How could we become more visible?
Let me ask you a question. Why do you need it to become more visible? Why do you want it to become more visible?
Well, I know because I wanted to attract the most genius young people to our industry. And if they don't know about us, they will choose somewhere else, like tech or...
I think it's a very difficult task because you can change things at the margins. You're not going to be able to revolutionize the core of what shipping is. Shipping is shipping. And yes, you can change it. And yes, you can make the ships look nicer. And yes, you can digitize it. And yes, you can do all these fancy things. But it doesn't change the fact that shipping is going to be shipping. And from that perspective, it's very hard to compare it to banking or tech, right? I think, shipping is probably never going to become as sexy as what tech is with Google. It's just not, it's not geared for it. But there is a market for everything. And we can most certainly take shipping and make it more interesting and more visible. I think that there's a lot of marketing that can be done around, the fact that shipping connects people. If you look at what the tech industry does today, or the most visible part of the tech industry, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, what do those tools do? They connect people. Everybody's talking about building communities, right? That's what Facebook's thing is. They build communities. Now, what does shipping do? Is we come full circle. Shipping is about connecting people, connecting things to people, right? So tapping into this sort of play around connectivity is fun and interesting. You won't appeal to everybody. And if you're talking to software engineers who don't really care about physical goods and material things, then it's going to be very hard to convince them to care about a big ship. A ship is always going to have to be made of what it's made of, whether it's like steel or then carbon fiber if it ever gets there, etc. But it's a physical good. And there are people who are always going to be interested in physical property. I think of myself. I started my career in banking. Banking was very interesting, but one of the things I never liked about it was that it was all completely abstract. It was not tangible, right? You deal with stocks, you deal with bonds, you deal with derivatives, you deal with the stock market goes up and down, and that's the mark of the economy, how the economy does. But it's all intangible. When I worked in the commodity trading world, the fact that everything was so tangible, right? You're dealing with real coal, not coal derivatives. It's coal that comes out of a mine, goes in a truck, goes on a train, goes on a ship. You can go on that ship. That ship goes into a port. That logistics chain, it's real. You can touch it. You can feel it. It's interesting. The world can't live without that, because if the world is all digital and nothing else, well, the bananas aren't going from where they grow to Sweden. So you will always find people who are interested in the tangible, in the real economy. And those are the people that I think you then need to target, so that they don't work necessarily on driverless cars, but how do they work on ships instead, right? So you can make it more sexy, but it's not going to appeal to somebody who only cares about, writing JavaScript.
Okay. So who would you be interested in listening to in a podcast, in the shipping podcast? Who do you think I should meet the next time?
Oh, wow. I'd favor listening to what the big bosses or the senior leadership of the big shipping companies have to say about this digital transformation process. But not necessarily lip service that they may pay to the fact that everybody talks about digital and how digitization is important, what it really means to them. Because at the end of the day, you can digitize stuff, but shipping is never going to go entirely digital. You still need a physical ship, right? So what value does it drive? And on the other hand, what is hype? That's one thing. And on the other hand, a lot of the little cool startups that are, or the not so little cool startups for that matter, who are actually making a difference and helping change the shipping industry. Those are the two areas that I think are the most interesting.
Okay. I have to see if I can find them then and sit down with it. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Oh, how I love that Mark is, as he says, going full circle when it comes to shipping connecting the world. Yeah, that is what we do. I'm just a little bit sad that tagline is taken. During next year, I'm going to test a little bit of new ideas also in the podcast. You should think about me as reliable but not predictable. So come March, I think there will be a panel discussion. I will collaborate with a company that wants to drive some debate in the industry. So you just wait and see. If you have any ideas of guests that you would like me to interview, I do all my interviews face-to-face, just so that you know. But you can send me an email at hello@shippingpodcast.com. and I will put that name on my target list. I get so happy when I get feedback. I love feedback. It makes me grow. It makes me become even better. So just send it in. And if you think that anything in this episode is really worthwhile, you can support me financially by going to the website patreon.com/shippingpodcast. That is sort of a direct support for me and my ideas. I am going to conquer the world, and if you want to help me with that, please go there. This podcast is free for everyone to listen to, but some people can afford to be backing me up. Next time, we will be back to blockchain again. I will be meeting someone who knows a lot about that. So, until then, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.